India derives its name from the river Indus. Through countless centuries, the way into India has been by the mountain passes of the northwest, and by this route, India has been invaded again and again. And so it's not surprising that we find a great many relics of past conquests in the north and west of India today. Ancient monuments, forts and palaces, whose styles remind us of the Persian and Mohammedan origins of their builders. But this northwestern region is not typical. We must travel many miles to get a true balanced picture of this great and varied country. To the traveller by rail, India appears to be one vast plain. In fact, the Indian peninsula is by no means all flat. There is a great mountain wall in the north, the great chain of the Himalayas, the highest mountains in the world. They swing in a smooth, unbroken curve for 1,500 miles, cutting India off almost completely from the rest of Asia. There is the great lowland plain, more than 2,000 miles from end to end, through which flow the great rivers Indus, Ganges, and Brahmaputra. And there is the great plateau, embracing all India south of the lowland plain. This plateau is flanked by a narrow coastal strip, and is broken by mountains here and there. Mountains such as the Nilgiris. Since 1947, the Indian peninsula has been divided into two nations, India and Pakistan, each of them self-governing states within the British Commonwealth of Nations. In this film, we're primarily concerned with India. The climate of India is tropical, in fact what is called a tropical monsoon climate. In other words, rain falls only at the time of the monsoons, strong winds that blow from June to September or October. The natural monsoon vegetation is essentially forest. But much of India has been deforested to serve the enormous population. What are the people like who inhabit this great tropical country? India has more than 360 million inhabitants. They do not belong to one race. The continuous stream of invaders through the ages has built up a population descended from at least 8 distinct racial types and speaking 222 different dialects. Generally speaking, the lighter-skinned people of the north are the descendants of the more recent invaders, while in the south live darker-skinned people who are descended from earlier invaders. But there are still many people, such as these Munda folk, the original inhabitants of the Indian peninsula, who were driven up into the hills by the warlike newcomers. They still speak their own ancient languages. The people of the northern border, in the foothills of the Himalayas, show unmistakably their Mongolian descent. There are many other differing people: Telugu, Tamil, Kannarese, wandering gypsy folk called Lombardies, too many types to describe them all in detail. But more important even than race in India is religion. The lives of people in India are often dominated by their religion, which may determine their upbringing, customs, habits, diet, occupation, and even their dwelling place. The predominant religion of India is Hinduism, practiced by more than 80% of the people. The great Hindu temples are seen at their most impressive in South India. Hinduism recognizes a supreme being and a host of minor deities. The temple elephant parades before the temple gate, and to make their offering to the gods, pilgrims climb the temple steps. The holy man sits deep in contemplation. And on Hindu festival days, crowds throng the streets. Long pilgrimages are made to the Ganges and other holy rivers of India. Here, it's believed, sins are washed away. The pilgrims take home some of the sacred water in brass pots for use in their houses at time of worship. In the streets, food is bought from the roadside vendors to give to the wandering holy men, recognizable by the ashes rubbed on their foreheads. Unlike many Western people, Hindus are taught to respect people who renounce worldly gain and devote their life to contemplation. Modern temples reveal that Hinduism is still as strong as ever. Today, cows, holy animals in the eyes of the Hindus, still wander unchecked wherever they wish, even in the busiest thoroughfares. A great feature of Hinduism is the caste system. A caste is a group of human beings who are born to certain professions or occupations. Thus the priests are always Brahmin, the highest caste. Members of the merchant class, such as the goldsmith, belong to the Vaishnava caste. Lower than these are the Shudra, those who do manual work, such as the blacksmith, the potter, the basket weaver, or the dhobies who wash the clothes. For centuries, caste could never be changed. Marriage was only possible within the same caste. Food could not be eaten with those of a lower caste. These dhobi workers have built their own small shrine beside their place of work, housing the small figure of a god to which they make offerings. Each caste is a self-contained community. In the villages, the people of the higher castes live in one part of the village, often in quite well-built houses. The people of the lower castes live in a separate part of the village, in much poorer houses. Lowest of all are the Harijans, those without caste. Formerly known as the untouchables, they are looked down upon by everyone. They do not mix freely with the caste people and do not use the common well. If their shadow so much as falls on the food of a person of higher caste, many would refuse to eat it. However, in modern India, the increase of travel is bringing about a closer intermingling of the people, and in the great cities, there is a gradual breaking down of rigid caste rules. Although Hinduism is the predominant religion in India, there are many others. There are more than 6 million Sikhs, for instance, one of whose customs is never to cut their hair. There are Buddhists, Jains, Parsis. Many of the aboriginal people of the hills are animists. There are many millions of Mohammedans. There are 8 million Christians. Christian missionaries have done much to pioneer medical and educational services throughout India, particularly among the Harijans, those without caste. India is mainly an agricultural country, and 80% of the people live in the villages. Rice is easily the most important food grain. It grows in standing water in fields that are carefully irrigated. Primitive methods are used, both in cultivating and threshing the rice. These oxen are treading on the harvested crop to separate the grains from the stalks, a crude way of threshing often employed in the villages. Over a large part of India, rice forms the main item of diet. Ginger, and spices such as chilies and cloves are often added, and a variety of vegetables. Some people add meat, if they can afford it. Millions can afford nothing more than rice every day of their lives. Food is eaten with the hand, the right hand only. To use the left hand would be considered very bad manners indeed. Millions suffer from malnutrition caused by this unvaried diet, lacking in many essentials for good health. A failure of this one crop, so dependent upon the monsoon rainfall, leads to widespread famine. The villages lack almost all modern amenities. The houses are usually built of mud, with roofs of local tiles and floors of bare earth. In the plains or on the plateau, most of the villages have an artificial lake called a tank for irrigation purposes. Tank irrigation is widely used in Asia. The tank is also used for washing clothes as well as cattle. The people wash themselves here too. Despite the lack of clean water, Indian people are most concerned about personal cleanliness. The tank often provides the drinking water as well. Nearby is the shrine where the higher caste people worship. Inside are the small figures of the gods to which offerings are made. In South India, there may be a painted horse on which, tradition has it, the gods ride at night to protect the village from evil spirits. A number of crafts are carried on in most villages. There would probably be the maker of grindstones, a potter, and perhaps a silversmith. Such tasks as making shoes would be left to the Harijans, the untouchables, for it involves handling leather, product of the holy cow, impossible for a man of caste. Harijans would be employed too on drawing water to irrigate the fields. In addition to rice, the crops of village India include maize, wheat in the drier areas, millet and beans. Here, bananas are being cultivated. A market is held on certain days in the largest village of the district. Here, the rice is bought and sold. Vegetables of many kinds can be purchased, and a few small luxuries, such as colored glass bangles. This, then, is the life of 80% of India's millions who live in the 500,000 villages of India. Let's look now at the India of the towns and cities. It's in the towns that the impact of Western civilization has been felt in India, for the villages, as we've seen, have scarcely changed at all. Calcutta is the largest city of India, with a population of nearly 3.5 million. It is a great inland port on the delta of the Ganges. Its great rival is Bombay, on the west side of India facing Europe. Madras is the third great port of India. These three ports, once the main trading post of the East India Company, handle the bulk of India's exports, the most important of which are tea, jute and cotton. The capital of India is Delhi. New Delhi, where the government buildings stand, is a short distance from the old city. It's one of the finest capitals in the world, and with its wide streets and modern buildings, makes a striking contrast with the old town. Here, as in most towns in India, we see the intermingling of old and new. We find the people of the merchant classes better dressed than any that we met in the villages. In the towns and cities of India, we find cultured and well-to-do people in their pleasant homes. Educated Indians have always been well known for their appreciation of philosophy and the arts. Even in the towns, gracious living is confined to the more wealthy minority. The majority of the people live hard lives in overcrowded conditions. Let's take a look at some typical town streets. Reminders of the days of British rule are still to be seen. The cinema is popular. India has the second largest film industry in the world.
பாருங்க பாம்பளை பாருங்க எத்தனை விதமான ஜாதி பாம்பு இருக்குது. மாட்டுல ஜாதி இருக்குது. மண்சேரி பிள்ளை கிடைக்கணும். கீரி பிள்ளைக்கு பாருங்க பாம்பளை பாருங்க எத்தனை விதமான ஜாதி பாம்பு. பாம்பளை பாருங்க ஜாதி பாம்பு இருக்குது. ஆனா பாம்பளை பாருங்க 16 விதமான.
Gradually, life in India is changing. Education is spreading. More schools and universities are being built, and education is available for girls as well as boys. But the introduction of Hindi as a universal language has not yet succeeded. Advanced courses in most subjects are still in English. Medical services are being expanded in towns and villages. Many more nurses and doctors are being trained. India's great problem is to increase her production, both of food and manufactured goods. Large irrigation schemes are in hand. Rivers are being dammed to divert the water into canals for the irrigation of more land. Labour is plentiful and cheap, and so most of these great schemes are carried out by manual workers. Rivers are being harnessed to provide hydroelectric power for new industry. New factories and offices are springing up in many parts of the country. Stimulated by the 5-year plans of the government, educated Indians, workers in industry, and those toiling to bring the great new projects to completion, are together striving to raise the standard of living of the people, to provide new housing, to instruct the masses, and to ensure that the citizens of tomorrow will have a more varied diet and opportunities of education and self-betterment. This is a formidable task because of India's vast population of more than 360 million. A population that is steadily increasing. And yet, despite the endeavours which are being made to change the old ways of life, the traditional culture still has a vital place in the lives of the people of India.